and Lindsay, perhaps best known as being a Home Alone apologist. Lindsay, happy 2025. How are you?
Hi, happy New Year. The first verses reference in my resume, that's the first time that I've heard that come up in an awfully long time.
Well, we had
Deep
to go
into the
way
bag of
back.
tricks.
That's
Yeah,
right. Deep into the
I
bag of
love
tricks.
it. Those are the
So,
good days.
how many of the Home Alones did you watch over the holidays?
I didn't
None?
watch any.
Oh, wow. I thought you were
I know.
counting.
No. The thing about first of all, I know some people feel strongly about Home Alone 2. Home Alone 2, I thought was terrible. I don't even understand that take. I've seen that on the Twitter in the last like couple of weeks, people being like, hot take, Home Alone 2 is better, and that's wild. Yeah, I actually, that's probably not accurate. I bet you Home Alone was on at some point. I have kids, so these things kind of exist in the background in my home just constantly. Whatever's on Netflix or whatever streaming service, that's kind of what I live my life by. But what is my actual favorite Christmas movie that I watch every single year when I'm wrapping presents that did not happen this year because I wasn't behind in the present wrapping situation is Love Actually. And I feel a little bit like off my game that I haven't seen it. I'm like, am I going to go a whole year without? Do I have to like squeeze it in February or something like that now just to like feel whole? Or I don't know.
I know the feeling. There are years that I miss National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and go, wait a second, something is off here. I didn't. Well, oh, that's right. I didn't watch Christmas Vacation. Now I got to see it. So sometimes you got to squeeze it in January just to make sure you're right.
So D.A, this is my, and everyone's going to be like, get her off, hater. This is my biggest Christmas hot take is that I could do without Christmas Vacation. I know.
Well, I'm not going to dismiss you that easily, but I'd like to know why.
I don't know. I think part of a lot of Christmas movies is wrapped up in nostalgia. I think Christmas Vacation for a lot of people is like, that was just what they liked when they were a kid, and the humor kind of like hit with them back in the day or something like that. And I think I missed that. I think I was raised without Christmas Vacation in, our family cycle for whatever reason. I don't even know why. And so it just doesn't hit that way for me. I don't feel nostalgic about it. And when I watch it now, I'm like,
Okay. Are you a Chevy Chase fan? Do you like Fletch? Do you like Caddyshack?
I mean, yeah, not like everybody else does.
Okay.
I get it. I get that there is a whole like this is a type of humor that just might not be, oh hi, I'm doing this by myself now. I'll be taking over Watch D.A live. I mean, there are brands of humor. Like sometimes people like slapsticky type of humor more than other people. And like I think I just am not the audience. I don't know.
Are you a big Elf fan?
Yes.
Because I feel like you're
defining me now. Like,
well, I do feel like there was the standard of Christmas movies when we were probably growing up. I'm probably a little older than you are, but was Christmas Story. Probably growing up, like Christmas Story was it. And then I feel like Christmas Vacation took that mantle.
Yeah.
And now I think that Elf took that mantle. And I feel like Elf is the consensus. Everybody loves Elf, and it's the ultimate Christmas movie. And I'm kind of like you are when it comes to National Lampoons. I'm like, Elf is good. I don't know if I have to watch it every single year, but there are some people that just now swear it feels like it's now the consensus.
Yeah, I think so too. And now there's tons. Now it's like, now with the streamers, there's just like Christmas. There's a Christmas movie like button on it that opens up a whole new world, right? Like all of the, I don't even know if this is the one, like not the Santa Clauses, but like the Christmas Chronicles. Like there's just, there are whole thing. And you know what's an underrated one? I don't know what streamer it's on. It's called 8-Bit Christmas. And it has Neil Patrick Harris in it. And it feels like it has that kind of like throwbacky sort of Christmas story-ish in the vibe. Like it feels like it's a throwback story of a kid, an adult is telling the story of a Christmas from his childhood. And the childhood is in the 80s. And so if you are kind of the like 40 plus age range, then it might kind of feel nostalgic for you. And it's not terrible. I'm saying it's not terrible like it is terrible. But like I actually think it's a pretty good movie. But I never hear anyone talk about it. So if anyone is feeling like sad that the holidays are over and wants to get like one more Christmas holiday in before we fully turn the page.
Yeah.
8-Bit Christmas, I think is what it's called.
Okay, so the comments are on fire right now. They were all expecting us to just do football, and now they are over the moon that we're doing this much movie talk. They love it. So at some point in time,
it's week 18.
I guess so. I guess, but at some point, we're just going to do movies with Lindsay Rhodes. This is so good. Everybody's into it. That's great. So, did you think that the Patriots did the right thing firing Jerod Mayo?
I don't know. So I feel like those kinds of decisions, clearly it was a very unsuccessful season, but I do feel like those kinds of decisions are usually made by people who are watching the process. And sitting as far away as I am, it feels like it's hard to say. I mean, it's just as likely that like he was doing the right thing, but the pieces weren't there. Whatever. Like the people who are in the building kind of know, like, I wanted you to do this with these people, like it wasn't working. You can tell with coaches, whether or not they feel like they have the answers and they're really kind of like seeing the matrix, but the people aren't executing on the field, or he just doesn't have the right pieces. There are people who are closer to the situation that I think that becomes clear over the course of a season. And it seems like what happened in New England, especially since I think they were relatively invested in him. So the fact that they turned the page this early when he was the hand-picked successor and he was only given a year and that this doesn't look good, I think they all know that. And so they must have felt pretty strongly that it wasn't going to get figured out. And in that case, I don't have a problem with turning the page.
It's got to be a precursor also to getting Mike Vrabel, right? I mean, would they do this unless they had Vrabel lined up and delivered?
I mean, I think yes, they would. I don't think it has to mean that, because although obviously the next question when you fire anybody is, okay, and now what, right? Like you have to have a better answer or an idea of where you could get a better answer. I don't think it necessarily has to mean that it's Vrabes. It could be like that they have done the math and they think that like just literally throwing on it, like a Liam Cohen, or like, they're probably not going to get a Ben Johnson, but maybe they've kind of figured that there are enough candidates out there that they think would be good. It does feel weird that they drafted a quarterback and went with a defensive head coach a little bit, right? Like that was the situation. It doesn't always have to be an offensive coach that you pair with somebody like that. But when you're trying to develop somebody and put them in that situation, I mean, it was just like the thing that I found the most surprising from the start of the season to now is the young wide receivers. And this feels so but like Jalen Polk, Javon Baker, like they took 2 bites at the draft apple, right, at that position. And it never really felt like, and they might just not be good, that's possible. But to the point of Elliott Wolf snuck that line in there in an interview that he did recently, right, where he felt like they were underdeveloped, particularly Jalen Polk. Like that's a shot at the coaching staff. And he might not have meant it that way, but it is, so did you put him in positions where you could max him out? It seems that maybe Elliott Wolf doesn't think that that's what happened. I don't know, man. That was a rough season. But what's weird is that you can have a season that's as rough as it is and still leave the season feeling like you hit on your quarterback. Like that's weird and sort of oxymoronic a little bit. Like usually if the season is terrible, it means that you have a bad quarterback. You don't have any hope for the future, or you're looking to replace that position. The fact that I think we're all feeling pretty good about their quarterback is an interesting place for them to be under the circumstances.
And it's the reason why that would be a desirable job. That's the reason that you would get anybody decent, is because of Drake May.
Yep.
Where do you fit the Packers into this thing? I was so high on the Packers coming into the season. I began the show talking about how disappointed I am in the way the season unfolded. They get into the playoffs, but has there ever been a more dispiriting, underwhelming 11-win season with less optimism going into the playoffs than Packers fans are dealing with right now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are other playoff teams that I think should feel a lot less optimistic than the Packers do. The Packers are interesting because I feel like I like to look at the numbers, right? And so obviously we're watching the games, and then I spent a good part of the week kind of like going through the numbers and some of the advanced numbers and seeing like what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, what's surprising. And the thing about the Packers is that when they leaned heavily into the run second half of the season, and Josh Jacobs was going crazy, and they weren't really leaning on Jordan Love that much. Jordan Love's EPA, CPOE, like that composite score of those advanced quarterback metrics was like top 5. Like he was really, really good. But they just he wasn't being put in a position where it was like, okay, Jordan, go win us some games, you know? But I don't know that we found out whether he couldn't, you know? And so it's an interesting Largents. Like I did do local sports in Santa Barbara. Sorry, the comments. I have like ADD. I can't focus on one thing or another.
Oh yeah.
But I think my main takeaway with the Packers this season, so offensive side of the ball, I think that they need like a wide receiver one. And I know some people kind of feel like that's dumb to have to like label the wide receivers like that, but they don't have like a target earner. They don't have a guy. They need a guy, in my opinion, that is that guy that's going to dominate target share. And then and then I think that their wide receiver room is good enough outside of that. Like they have a wide receiver room of people that are all good, but not great, you know? And so it's an interesting, I mean, people who play fantasy, you mentioned I do a fantasy podcast. They've been so frustrating because you can't play any of those wide receivers for the majority of the season in fantasy because you never know which one it's going to be. And it could be Jaden 1 week and then he goes away for like 6 weeks, you know, and it's hard to tell. Dontavian Wicks is the most interesting wide receiver in that room to me, because he's a guy who, like, if you look at all of the, like the grading and stuff, like if you're judging him, if you just look at him and you judge every single route and all of the, like the ability to separate all of these different things that are kind of the things that are hard to find, he does those well. And then he gets a ball that comes his way and it bounces off his hands. It's like, the catching should be the easy thing for the wide receiver to do. He does all the hard things, but he can't catch the ball. And it's wild. It's like on the Sumer Sports Show last Tuesday, we were talking about Anthony Richardson, who weirdly grades. So we have like an all-in grade, you know, like a scouting type of grade at Sumer. And he grades out as the best decision maker in the NFL.
Wow.
Anthony Richardson. And what that means by the standards of this grading scale is that he scans the field and on any given play, puts the ball or targets the person with the ability to pick up the most yards. He consistently, apparently, makes the smartest decision in that regard more often than other people, which is crazy. And then his accuracy rating is the lowest in the NFL. And it feels like that's like the quarterback version of what I'm talking about with Dontavian Wicks. Where you're like, okay, so maybe he can see the field and he is making the decision making, which you would think is the hardest part for a younger quarterback. Maybe he does do that well, and then he just can't throw the ball well to the right spot. Like It's like, you know, there are some things that are just really hard to figure out, but then it makes that a hard eval because you're like, well, you could go into the off season and just throw some balls, work on that, right? Like if you're Dontavian Wicks, like, hey, work with some jugs machines. And this is how they do that, apparently. What am I doing? But anyway, so my guess is that you're going to hear fantasy people touting Dontavian Wicks maybe again next season. I don't know. But this is a very long-winded answer about the Packers and whether or not I'm excited about them in the playoffs. Holy hell.
No, it's fantastic. And I got to tell you, we rarely have this type of feedback from the listeners in real time from our guests. I mean, you're fantastic. Right now, everybody's on fire. This is so awesome. And so check out Lindsay's podcasts, Fantasy Dirt from SI, then also Sumer Sports. She does a ton of content over there. And as you said, one of our regular Watch D.A. aliens, Largent, brought up, your roots in Santa Barbara TV. So
Yes.
tell us about starting out your career in Santa Barbara.
I actually started out in the Tri-Cities, Yakima, Washington.
Wow. Okay.
And then went to Santa Barbara and worked for like a Fox startup for like 6 months. And then they sold the company to another
Really?
local station and I went to LA. But yeah, so I did local sports. I was the sports director. You know those days, like doing all of the things, running around with my camera, shooting the highlights at the high school game that's an hour away, racing back in the car to edit it myself, and then writing the script and then jumping out on set. I ran out on set one night without makeup on.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, well, I mean, my highlight has to be like it's a choice here. We're up against the clock, and I'm gonna make the choice to like make the highlight good. That's and awesome. Then I got on set and went, that was the wrong choice. Could have cut that shit. This tape lives forever. Except luckily it didn't back then. Now it does. Now I would never advise somebody. Yeah, so that's why I'm sitting at home talking to you right now. I make choices like that.
That's hysterical. You know, I was just thinking about my early days in the business. My first part-time job at a professional station was in Rochester, New York. And then my first full-time job was in Fort Myers, Florida. And if you would have told me back then, hey, one day you'll be, working for Sirius XM or CBS Sports Radio or doing stuff for NFL Network, I would have been like, oh my God, pinch me. And so there's so much that comes out of the journey and the destination and where we are now. At the same time, I thought the earliest days in this business might have been more fun in some ways because you kind of don't know what you don't know and you're just winging it. As you said, you have to make all these decisions because you're the only person doing anything. I mean, I was employed at 23 to be a producer, an update anchor, a assistant program director. I made schedules, I made commercials, I was production. I mean, it was like whatever they can force me to do for $18,000 a year, they're going to force me to do it. I would gladly do it. Yep. And there was something about that that's a little bit more rogue and a little bit more like, I don't know, living on the margins. And I don't know if you felt the same way, like in Yakima or Santa Barbara.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting time of life. And it's one that I tell people who are getting into the business now, and things have changed so dramatically from when you were getting into the business and I was getting into the business. Back then, like you had to go live in a small town. You had to do the small market, work your way up. Now you don't have to. You could start a YouTube channel or you could, create an online presence and then kind of slide in. But I still tell people that that they still should, because it's such good experience when you have to do everything. Like your learning curve is so steep because you have to get a show on the air that night, every single night at the exact same time. There's no wiggle room. If they're coming to you for sports at whatever 6:20 or whenever it is that people go to sports, then that you got to be sitting at that desk and you better have everything done. And so, it's a really good opportunity to just like knock stuff out. And then if it sucks, which it always sucks in the beginning, then you get to go back and do it again the next day, and then the next day, and then the next day. And so you have to flush those bad thoughts that we all go home with in the beginning. Like, you get to flush that faster. So I think it's a great experience. What I always think is weird is how it's like an inverse pyramid of responsibility in this business. When you are the most green and the least about how to do anything, like that's when they go, do it all. And then you like end up in a situation, toward the end where you're like at NFL Network and you're like, I have a question. Research. Can you look up whether this has ever happened before? Thank you very much. You know what I mean? And then could you do my makeup real quick while I write this script? Like it's, which is how I said everything, by the way. Like, yeah, you develop like a country club accent, which is weird. No, but I think that that's the funniest part is that it actually in many ways gets easier the more experience that you have, which is kind of feels a little bit backwards.
Yeah, it's one of the great ironies. That's a really good observation. I won't keep you much longer since you got a family and it's a Sunday night, but I want you to know that for coming on the show, we are giving you A bottle of Santo Blanco tequila is coming your way. Santo is one of our great sponsors. It is Guy Fieri and Sammy Hagar's signature tequila. And so for joining us here on the show, we're going to send you a bottle of Santo for the new year. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Craig. No, you don't get my bottle of Santo by Guy Fieri. I love how you say that, by the way. You're just like, you're leaning into the fancy pronunciation.
Well, that guy prefers it pronounced that way. So you know what? We want to make sure that we get it right.
I think that's respectful. So good. Yeah, I'll report back when I'm barfing after drinking that, which is not a product of that. It is a product of tequila not liking me very much, but I'm sure that this one will go much better.
Does that date back to college? Because we all had that. That's vodka for me.
I know that's what everybody always asks, and I think no, because I've tried my hand at some like higher end tequila. I think whatever. This is a sponsorship for you. Look at me. I'm like, hey, let me tell you all the bad things about tequila.
It makes me barf every time, and I've tried good stuff.
As this pops up. I'm sorry. It's a me thing. It's not a tequila thing. It's a me.
They understand. Everybody has a bad experience with tequila at one point in their life. Luckily, this one, I don't think you should have such a bad experience because it's a pretty good tequila. But for our audience, which loves you, they can find you on the Fantasy Dirt podcast. Will you guys be doing off-season pods for it as well?
Every once in a while, not consistently. So we're going to wrap up the season tomorrow. So this is a bad time to promote that. Hey, everybody, tune in. Although if you want to subscribe that would be amazing. And then it won't even flood your feed. But like, that would be awesome. Like, let's boost our numbers. But the Sumer Sports Show will be on throughout the off season. And this is kind of that's main season. Now that we're heading into draft season, we'll be at Senior Bowl. We'll be at all of the different like combine and all of that nerdiness I'm so excited about.
We got a lot of football nerds that watch this show, so this is totally up their alley. Sumer Sports is where you can find all this great analytics and data and all this really cool interpretation of it and analysis, especially for the postseason and the offseason draft work and things like that, free agency. So check it out. Sumer Sports is where Lindsay Rhodes can be found. Lindsay, this was really fantastic. I mean, really, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking time out on a Sunday night and being so gracious with your time. And we'll get that bottle out to you. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me. I had a blast.
You got it. Lindsay Rhodes joining us here on the show tonight. Gotta love it.